Welcome to the JD Bunkis podcast. Happy Super Bowl Friday to everyone but Patriots fans. This is where now it's real. If you are a fan of either of these two teams, like if you're not, then this is fine. You're not even really thinking about it. You got your party. Hopefully, I recommend always party over bar. It's just way better to have a ton of food, a couch, some friends. It's a better situation than when you do the bar move for the Super Bowl. I've done that. I did it once or twice. Just doesn't hit the same way. But yeah, now if you are a fan of one of these two teams, the nerves have officially set in. Now it's a reality. You had these basically 2 weeks where you didn't have to really think about anything other than cute media day interviews. The highlight of which being the Patriots tackle, Will Campbell, sharing that he hates cats because one attacked his foot at a sleepover when he was a kid and he kicked it. Other than that, we didn't get too much. So the trade deadline is done. Joe Casciaro in a couple of minutes here. The Raptors, I would say, underwhelmed. They didn't really dramatically disappoint. I think most people started to understand over the last few days the reality of the situation pretty clearly. They didn't have the contracts, and they didn't have the assets, and they didn't have the cap space to get something of significance done. And based on the way that this team was playing and has played this season, while you can make the case it has been better than expected with a couple of key areas, and certainly the record is better than expected, but I think it's closer to what you could have imagined than maybe it's portrayed at times, especially given the strength of schedule and the status of the Eastern Conference, which you got a lot of teams that have really underperformed, like the Orlando Magic, losing Franz Wagner for as long as they've had, and just being kind of meh. The Atlanta Hawks, another team that a lot of people projected would be taking a step forward this year, ended up taking a pretty significant step backwards. There's a lot of mediocrity to bad in the Eastern Conference this year, and the Raptors haven't been bad. They've been good. But this deadline, one of the biggest takeaways for me is it really does show you the path forward for the Raptors being a very difficult and complicated one. The contracts that they have are not getting materially better. Jakob Poeltl's on the books for another 3 seasons. I don't think that they're going to move off of Emmanuel quickly, who is signed to 32 long term. R.J. Barrett becomes an expiring, but it seemed pretty clear at this deadline that his value is pretty nebulous and certainly doesn't appear to be a bunch of teams lined up that really want to take that guy on. And while he is valuable to the Raptors, and Bobby Webster in his media conference yesterday spoke saying when he plays, we win. Well, you're not winning against the best teams in the NBA. The Raptors are 1-12 against top 10 opponents. And so while the record is quality and the season has been good, that part is the major hurdle for this Raptors team. And I was a little surprised, I got to tell you, that Bobby Webster, when he spoke yesterday, invoked the word rebuild when speaking about this franchise. Because, yeah, it's early in this, with this group. The Brandon Ingram and Scotty Barnes core of the team. The Emmanuel quickly, I guess he's part of this core. It doesn't really appear that way because it seemed, at least from speaking to people around the league and all the guests that came on the show, that he was available. That if Raptors would have moved off that guy and not really batted an eyelash if the right move came along for them. So, yeah, you're early in this process, but it's late already, given the nature of them being a team that was actively trying to duck the tax. And there is a price to these things, right? Like, I think the second-round pick thing, I've joked about this with Blake Murphy a million times, how I don't really care when teams trade second round picks or for them, and that it's become a hugely popular move around the NBA. But the one move that I actually liked for the Raptors, there was two, but like that I would have done. But the one in particular was Ayo Dosunmu, who went to the Minnesota Timberwolves for 4 second-round picks. And I guess maybe the Bulls do like Rob Dillingham, but yeah, I don't know why they would like him given what he's shown so far for a team that wanted him to play right away, by the way. Like, it wasn't like he was buried and just couldn't get in there. It's just, yeah, Bones Highland stole his minutes. Not ideal. Yeah, required a bunch of second-round picks. So they end up salary dumping, but their general manager is talking about rebuild, and that's just not really the way that I feel about this team right now. They're not at a crossroads. They've got time. This is going to be a very important offseason. When they get Jakob Poeltl back, assuming he will, because he is, according to Darko Rajakovic, quote-unquote, ramping up well, you'll probably be able to get a better picture of this team. And I think that if they had their full complement of players, that they wouldn't be 1-12 against top 10 opponents. But that was always the case with this team. Like, you sign an older 7-footer, you have RJ Barrett, you have Emmanuel Quickly, you have, like, I know Brandon Ingram's been really healthy, but this group of players, one of the big question marks was, could you stay healthy enough as a group to be able to get a clear picture as to what you have? And so far, the answer to that is no. And the idea that you're going to keep all 5 of those starters healthy throughout the course of an entire season or get to a playoffs where all those guys are healthy, it's a pretty risky maneuver. And so while I'm not really disappointed with the deadline, because, again, there's just not very much I would have done. And while I don't really care about the big man they brought in, who is, I guess big in the context of the world, he's 6'9". But in the context of the NBA, Trace Jackson Davis, who doesn't provide them with any shooting. He's taken 5 3-point shots over the course of his NBA career, and who is 6'9", and doesn't serve as an immediate upgrade to the 2 front court players that they're playing right now. And certainly when they bring in Jakob Poeltl, and they've got 3 of those guys, I'm not exactly clear on his path to minutes. Yeah, that is whatever, because of the context of what you could do. But I don't see that really changing. Like, what's the move? I guess Jakob Poeltl could come back and play great, and that answers your center position. But are you really going to trust the back when I'm talking to Grange and he's saying that they've looked at this guy's back, they've evaluated it, and there's nothing that they can find that is really wrong with it that they feel like they can correct. So you don't assume that the back is going to get better as he ages. Again, RJ Barrett's contract might be a little bit more valuable as an expiring, but it doesn't seem as though it's going to net anything massive for you in terms of a trade windfall. My opinion on Emmanuel Quickly is the contract will get better because it stays at $32 million, but we have a pretty good sample of this player now, and the idea that he is going to take some massively consequential step seems a little far-fetched to me. Like, the idea when you made that trade with OG Anunoby was he could become a fringy all-star player. And while he has some games where he can explode and his 3-point shot is falling and he looks great, the overall body of work is he's a middling player in the NBA. I think that's what I can't remember exactly what Bobby Marks said, but he said, like, I think by now we would have known if there was a little bit more to give there. So you've got a really good star player, but I also don't know if Scotty Barnes is so great that he's going to be able to elevate a mediocre team around him. And the Ingram experiment has been solid, but yeah, like that 1-2 pairing, I don't think is good enough to overcome a heavily flawed roster to be a really competitive team. So you can call yourself a rebuild all you want, but you're not going to be tanking. You're not going to be adding pieces through the bottom of the draft lottery. There's not going to be more Colin Murray Boyles coming in terms of high lottery picks that you can project moving forward. And so, yeah, that's really just the way that I'm feeling today is the path forward to good or out of the middle is pretty murky for this Raptors team, and there was not really any clarity added at this deadline. Joe Casciaro of theScore joins me now. He's got no internet, so he's over the phone. What's up, buddy?
Thanks for having me. Thanks for accommodating the phone call.
Yeah, no problem. So, yeah, we're going to hear you have a conversation with a technician potentially at some point during this call?
No, I've made sure that my wife's Going to handle that when the technician arrives any minute now.
She's handling the technician. Okay, so
she took the notes. We're good.
Yeah, let's just start with this. How do you feel about the Raptors deadline?
Underwhelming and anticlimactic, but completely understandable and defensible is what I'd say. Not sure if I can expand on that if you want. Essentially, I was worried that, based on some of the rumors and the reporting out there by some credible reporters, that the Raptors were going to make a short-sighted move, that they were going to buy into this particular team and this start to the season a little too much, and that they were going to make the kind of move, quite frankly, that would be similar to like the Jakob Poeltl move a couple of years ago, or, one of those, we're giving up a first-round pick to get marginally better, but we're not close enough to contention for marginally better to make a difference, And I was genuinely worried that might have been the case. So I know there are a lot of people that are a little disappointed with what ended up happening at the deadline. I was actually relieved, and I was more relieved after speaking to Bobby Webster last night at that press conference because, look, I know, an executive can only say so much, and they're also purposely trying to hit the right notes when they speak to the media, but I really did think Bobby mostly hit the right notes in his post-deadline presser when he talked about the fact that they weren't going to chase something with this team. They weren't going to necessarily overpay. I like that there seemed to be a self-awareness there that a lot of executives don't always have with teams in this position. Sometimes teams overachieve a little, or a young team is, slightly ahead of schedule, and teams or executives rush to do something, buying into it a little too much. I liked the self-awareness we heard from Bobby last night, which was essentially, look, we weren't going to chase anything with this team. We're still, I can't remember if he said we're still like on the upwards with this core, but he essentially said the hard evaluations will come once we see them play the final third of the season, play some playoff games, some tough decisions will come in the summer, but we weren't going to chase anything. I liked what he said about how, even still at this point, like just trying to bring in talent where they can is more important than just filling certain skill sets. Because again, that's the kind of thing you do when you're on the cusp of contention, when you're right there and it's like, hey, we just need to fill this hole because we're trying to win a championship and we'll move a pick to do it. Or we maybe will eschew getting the best long-term talent. I don't think the Raptors are there yet. And I was actually, relieved and happy to hear Bobby Webster speak like that.
So I will say this, though. If I was a general manager, I would, and I wanted to take pressure off myself heading into a deadline, I would be going, well, we could trade for Anthony Davis or Domantas Sabonis. We could be giving up future first for imperfect players on a flawed roster and have everybody sweat it out going, please don't do this, please don't do this. And then you do nothing. And then the fan base is relieved, right? They go, whoo, that's nice. So I think that they've actually opened up a new template for a level of expectations for fan bases moving forward. Like if you just threaten doomsday scenarios and then don't do them, it's a win.
Yeah, I think in general, for a GM that's obviously been on the job for a while, but in terms of it being completely his show, I think we can call this year one. I think there's a lot of benefits, in terms of even self-preservation to lengthen the runway, right? And to make sure everyone knows that, hey, like, we're not there yet. We're not going to chase anything. And for sure, that's part of it too. But nevertheless, even though that definitely did, come into the equation here, I still think it led to smart acting by the Raptors in the sense of, again, understanding that, yes, this has been a fun year. And I think there's promise here and whatever, but they are not a contender. Like, I know you were talking about the record against some of those top teams. Even if they were healthy, I think that record would be a little better.
Sure.
I don't think they would be, there would be indications that they're ready to compete for a championship this spring. And I think keeping perspective is important because the worst thing a team in this position can do is take itself too seriously and set themselves back 2 or 3 years.
100%. Listen, I'd been preaching this for 2 weeks leading up to the deadline, saying, and actually even beyond that, because we got Anthony Davis rumors, like a month into the season? And I went, please, God, don't do that. And now, at least for Wizards fans, there's a removal of this idea that once you traded for him, you had to sign the automatic extension. So I guess that's all right. But yeah, I didn't want the Raptors to be doing some kind of a move that took on more risk at the price of draft picks. And I think that everybody agreed with the assessment in terms of where this team was at, which is, like you said, they can't chase things. The only thing to me that I think is going to start to shift in this conversation is what I was discussing right before you came on, which is um, I was a little surprised that Bobby used the word rebuild, right? So he has this quote, be patient. We don't need to hurry. Think back to your expectations when we started this year, end quote. I actually think that they're fairly close to what the expectations were to start this year. Like, I know the record is better in terms of like their standings in the Eastern Conference. Like I think as of today they're fifth, but that's they're very close. They're just a couple of games back of even being third, and there actually is a little bit of separation between them and say 6, 7 that range. But yeah, the Eastern Conference is pretty flat. There are some teams that have like drastically underperformed. The Raptors have had what I would say is a good season from the standpoint of Barnes and Ingram, but yeah, like they are kind of where I expected them to be in terms of the feel of the organization, which is you're a good enough team to win when you're healthy, but your ceiling is something that remains to be very difficult to see. And like when you talk about championships, right, and paths towards championships, the easiest way to do this is, well, we're just tanking and we're flipping picks and we're doing everything we can to sell and get to the bottom of the lottery. And they're just not going to do it that way. And for a while now, that has not been the template for what the Raptors want to do. But I just don't like the path forward for me from, okay, if you're a rebuilding team, that means you're still acquiring draft assets. That means you're still, technically building through the draft. But that path isn't really the way the Raptors are going to go about this. And so when I try to project moving forward, hey, all right, how different is this deadline from, say, the offseason? That part of it to me is the bigger question here. Like, yeah, you could show something in the playoffs, but nobody thinks you're going deep. Like maybe you win a round. Maybe you find out that Pirtle can be a little healthier. I don't know exactly what that is, but you don't really want to re-sign RJ Barrett, do you? Like, I certainly
No,
don't. Not at the number that
no,
he's going to command.
no.
I don't feel better about Pirtle's contract as it gets older. I feel a little bit better about Quickly's, but yeah, just I don't know at all what the next step is for this organization in terms of going from good to contender.
Yeah, I think it's very possible we see. Again, fans might not want to hear this, but progress isn't always linear, and I wouldn't be shocked if we see maybe like a little bit of progress right now and then a step back before more progress. And the reason I say that is because it's not just that you can look at this team and say, okay, the progress is going to be obvious because this is the core. And again, I think it's been a fun year and there's some promise, but to me, the only no-brainers that are going to be part of the long-term core and that you can project out and say, even when this team contends again relatively soon, the guys that are going to be here are, and the only ones to me that I would 100% put in that category are Scotty Barnes and Colin Murray-Boyles, because I do have high hopes for Colin Murray-Boyles.
Same.
And maybe, listen, Brandon Ingram's played really well. He's been efficient. He's been healthy. He's really helped their offense. Maybe if he continues to play this way and then there's eventually an extension with him worked out where they're not overpaying, I wouldn't be shocked if he's part of the mix too. But to me, Scotty Barnes and Colin Murray-Boyles are the guys. And everything and everyone around them, I'm not going to say they're all completely disposable. Like I like Jamal Shedd, even Emmanuel Quickly, whose contract I don't like. There are things he does that complement Barnes that I understand. But a lot of the guys around Barnes and Murray-Boyles to me, and maybe even Shedd, are just kind of here right now and slightly make sense for this team and where they're at right now, but might not be part of the long-term vision. And so that's why I think the Raptors are just in a very kind of awkward and unique situation where it's like they are this good, technically young team that is kind of ahead of schedule, but at the same time, they're not really the core that you can envision when they take the next step. It's a very awkward position to be in. And to be honest with you, it kind of makes the last couple of years and those quasi tanks more frustrating because whether it was a couple of years ago when they had the protected pick they tried to keep and didn't, or whether it was last year when, listen, they got a great player in my eyes in Colin Murray-Boyles, but they were clearly tanking coming into the year or by the quarter of the season and then didn't really commit to the tank all the way through and it hurt their draft positioning. To me, it's the last couple of years that now become more frustrating because you're not sitting here with a Con Knipple where you're like, okay, well now we're cooking. You're not sitting here with a guy like that makes it a more obvious fit. So they're just in an awkward spot. It's a very awkward spot for a good young team to be in.
Yeah, I look at so I couldn't help but do that over the last couple of days of just you trade for Jakob Pertl. You give up a first round pick that became something that not Dillingham, but as Grange pointed out, it was really valuable. The future Minnesota first. And
Mhm.
what a coveted asset that would be if you had the first round pick of Minnesota that's unprotected and I think 2031. You traded a first to get Ochai Agbaji, who you end up having to move 2 second-round picks to get off of. So you look at that in concert and you say 2 years of Ochai Agbaji experience for a first and 2 seconds, not exactly what you want. You think about Thad Young, right? Trading back, getting out of the
Yeah.
first round. A pick that could have been Walker Kessler. There's just way too many of those moves over the last 5 years that have put them in this position where they do kind of need to dig themselves out of it. So while again, the general manager's talking about rebuild. I don't. I actually didn't feel that way yesterday. Right, like they're playing this Bulls team that just gutted their roster,
Yep.
and they get a win, and I didn't really care. And if you're a rebuilding team, you care about those games. But now, all I really want to focus on I would say, maybe this is a little narrow-minded, but I only want to watch them play the top 10 teams. Like now that they're 1-12, that's sort of the solve for me is okay, get healthy or let me see what you look like when you have a 18-point lead against a good team. Can you protect this? Can I not feel like this is slowly just going to crumble and fall apart? Yeah, that's not a rebuilding team to me. Is one when you're trying to set expectations of let me see how you look against winning teams. And so, I just I can't stress this enough. Maybe they figure it out. But I just, when you say it's a unique position, I look at it and say, I think it's a really, really, really difficult spot to be in terms of taking that next step out of the place no one really wants to be a year from now, which is just good and stuck in kind of the middle. Anyway, let's keep this moving. Let's actually, no, I'll do a couple more Raptors things before we move to the NBA trades that you liked. I have one on court thing that's been bothering me
Okay.
that I wanted to talk to you about with these blown leads. I So they're playing Minnesota. And around the 8-9 minute mark, Darko takes out Ingram and Scotty at the exact same time. And the lead is starting to fall apart, and they're leaning on RJ Barrett. And I don't understand why the Raptors continue to do this, where they sit both guys at the same time during crunch time as they're playing really good teams. And I guess the question for you is when you're watching them blow these leads, which they have now in 3 consecutive games against good opponents, what is your prevailing sentiment as to why this has been happening?
Yeah, I agree they should stagger the minutes with Scotty and Brandon to make sure one of them's pretty much always on the court unless it's garbage time.
Yeah.
I think there are a number of reasons they're blowing leads. I think one of them is just that the team doesn't have enough shooting, and that's one thing that was not addressed at the deadline. And when you don't have enough shooting in the modern NBA, you can get cold quickly, and the other team probably won't be as cold, and a lead can evaporate pretty darn quickly. That's one. Two, I think we've seen a lot of stuff in those last few games they've blown where the ball's not in the right guy's hands as consistently as it should be, whether that's Scotty, whether that's Brandon. I know quickly's the point guard, but the crunch time offense should flow through those two guys. And listen, I'm
Yep.
also open to the idea that when it's in Brandon Ingram's hands, there are going to be times when he takes a bad shot or maybe forces something. And I'm not saying it's always going to be perfect or aesthetically pleasing, but he'll probably at least get a shot up. I can tell you that.
Mhm.
Those kinds of players, those mid-range maestros, the self-creators. The one thing they don't do a lot is turn the ball over, like we saw R.J. Barrett do the other night, or even Jamal Shed. So I think getting the ball in the right guy's hands, staggering the minutes. But the one inescapable thing here is that there's not going to be enough shooting on this team this season because the deadline has passed. And so you can get the ball in the right guy's hands and you can stagger minutes and you do all those things. You can run nice sets. But if you don't have the overall offensive talent or the overall shooting talent to space the floor properly, to get yourself out of jams, it's going to be tough. And I think that's a problem they'll continue to encounter because, again, there's no help coming, when it comes to a shooter. So unfortunately, we might just have to live with it for another few months.
Yeah. They really can't play Grady Dick a ton of minutes because
No.
I think that his confidence is completely fallen apart. His defense is it's so bad to watch that it's like when the scary part's coming up in a horror film and you brace yourself because you're like, oh, they're going to jump scare me here. They're going to jump scare me here. And that's me when I'm watching Grady Dick play defense where it's just the best outcome is he's going to take a foul. You're like, okay, he fouled him. All right.
Well,
Hopefully it's side out. So they're not getting more shooting there, right? And
they're not getting a lot from Grady. Sorry to interrupt, but
yeah, go ahead.
even like last night was kind of a perfect example of the Grady Dick experience and failure, quite frankly, up to this point. In that, obviously, they drafted him to be a shooter. We've been over that ad nauseum. He has not proven to be a shooter anywhere but the corner so far in his career and this season. But also, like, a big part of it was the shooting at his size, right?
Yep.
Which was a good combination. He was a good rebounder and all this stuff. Last night, couldn't make a shot, and also at one point got caught flat-footed and couldn't get a defensive rebound over the smallest guy on the court. And that offensive rebound for the Bulls led to 3 points. So to me, last night was like the perfect experience. This guy was supposed to be this good shooter with good size, good rebounder at the 3 spot and all these things. And it's like, well, he's not doing any of that right now, and he's playing terrible defense.
Yeah. It's really it's uncomfortable right now because they could really use him. They could really use the shooting. And like where I was going with this is they play that first half against Minnesota, and RJ's knocking down threes, and everybody was actually hitting threes. And you saw what the ecosystem looks like around Barnes and Ingram if you've got shooters that are making open looks and how much better the offense looks. And so, like, if we're doing the whole rebuild or path to contention thing, there is a huge part of me that really wants to see what the Raptors could do with just a good, not even great, just a good, adequate amount of shooting around them. Because when they are hitting those shots, which is pretty damn infrequent given where they are in the rankings of three-point shootings and percentages. That's a big curiosity point to me. It's again, another thing where you go, well, how are you going to be able to do that? Because it seems like a pretty heavy lift from a roster standpoint. I guess it does start with RJ Barrett, right? Which they again, Bobby Webster has this quote of, when he plays, we win. RJ's an additive player. He is a good culture fit with this team. There have been games this season where he has taken the ball into his hands late and done things for them. I think you're right that this needs to be more through Scotty Barnes. Part of this evolution for him as a player needs to be, I got to be the guy at the end of games who's a little bit more aggressive. To me, he disappears a little too much. It becomes a little too Ingram focused in these fourth quarters. And I need to see more from Barnes. But part of that, too, is when you have a guy like RJ, he's going to also need the ball in his hands. And now you got 3 of those guys. The question is, okay, so if he's an expiring whatever, you're just kind of moving off of him. But again, doesn't seem like there's a bunch of teams clamoring for him. He makes $27 million right now. I was told by a couple of people that he's going to want a raise, which makes sense. Who are the teams that are paying RJ $30+ million a year? Like, that doesn't make any sense to me based on what we've seen from him over the course of his career.
Yeah, listen, I mean, the nature of the NBA cap and how big that number continues to get because of the TV money and the media rights money flowing in will make it so that, an RJ Barrett or whoever of that caliber can make $30 million, and it's actually not a crazy percentage of the cap. But if you're asking me, I wouldn't be the team that gives it to him. I like RJ. I think he's gotten better here. I think he has fit here. And if you could give me a healthy RJ with what he's provided this season, when healthy, for the next X number of years besides Scotty at a good cap number, I'd be like, yeah, I'd sign up for that, no problem. But I don't think that's going to be the case, right? Whether it's because one team out there is willing to give him the money or just because he wants the money somewhere, I don't think that hometown discount is coming. I could be wrong, but I just don't. And so if you ask me, I wouldn't be the team that pays him that money. It's also why, again, kind of going back to the Quickly thing, even though I don't like the contract, the dearth of shooting on this team is what has made Quickly, I don't want to say invaluable, but pretty valuable to the core of this group, because they really need, even if he's not making the shots, obviously that's what you want him to do, but the threat of him being out there, the fact that defenses actually respect him as a shooting threat, as a movement shooter, as a pull-up shooter, those things matter in the ecosystem of an offense. They provide spacing. RJ slashing does the same thing, even if he's not shooting, which he's done well. It's like, those things matter. So again, it kind of keeps coming back to this thing of the Raptors being in this awkward point where some of these guys might not be here for the long term. They might not be in the long-term plans, but they're also weirdly really important to what they're trying to do at this very moment. It's I don't want to say it's a mess, because it's not, but it's interesting,
Yeah, it's not a mess, but again, if you just look at it through the lens of what is your path to become a contender, right? The Raptors are ahead of all these teams that are tanking and ripping things down to the studs, right? Of course they are. But their path is clear. Same thing with the contender groups. The Raptors' path, like if you just want to put it through that lens, right, of how do you become a great team, how exactly you're going to do that, I honestly think that they're one of the most complicated teams in the entire NBA.
Yeah, I think that's fair. I think that's fair. I mean, having all of their own picks definitely helps. Their first
Mhm.
rounders, but again, there's no surplus picks there, right? And
Nope.
that's like you want to talk about. I know you want to get into the NBA at large eventually, but
Mhm.
like, you want to talk about the type of swing Utah took, where they, rebuilding team, not really that concerned about this year, still prioritizing the draft, but takes the kind of preemptive step to get Jaren Jackson in the house. Who, you know what, he might be overpaid and his next contract might not be great, but he's a great two-way player, still 26 years old. Yeah, it cost 3 first-round picks. Guess what? None of those picks were Utah's own picks.
Yeah.
Well, one of the three was one of those, like, we get the best of these 4 teams' picks, and I guess Utah's one of the 4. So you could say maybe one of their first-round picks was theirs. But see, we've got the surplus picks because most rebuilding teams were making moves to acquire first-rounders and selling off assets to get first-rounders. You end up with surplus picks, and you can take a stab on a Jaren Jackson. And listen, I will be the last one to believe in what Washington is doing, but if there's an argument to be made for what Washington did the last, whether it was Trae Young, Anthony Davis, even the AD deal, they could say, we didn't trade one of our own first rounders. So, yeah, we might have accelerated things a little bit or a lot, but we still control all our own first
Yeah.
rounders. And that's the kind of move that the Raptors really couldn't make. And I'm not talking about AD specifically, but just the Raptors, when you talk about that complicated path to take the next step, it's because they didn't have the surplus draft capital where they can make one of like a type of move like that now and still have the bullets in the chamber to make a bigger move later, right?
That's exactly right. Every move they make comes with a huge amount of risk that other
Right.
teams didn't have to. Like that's the thing about the AD trade for Washington is I think one of those picks is the Thunder pick.
Yeah,
Right, right.
and
Like
again, they're none of them are their own picks.
no, I know, but
So
it's just they're low value back at
yes,
the draft
yeah,
first that they have acquired over the last couple of years. So they're like, yeah, whatever. We can't pick all of these guys because we do have a surplus and this isn't a risk. Whereas if the Raptors would have done that deal and they gave up their first this year, you're like, oh my God, that actually comes with some stakes. You better
right.
win some basketball games right now. When is AD getting on the floor? Because we kind of need him right now. So yeah, the point is well made. That all this said, this is the last Raptors one. Then I do want to talk about some of the other NBA stuff. Was there one trade you wish the Raptors did? Because you mentioned the Jaren Jackson one. Some people talked about that, but you kind of made the case there that they didn't really have the assets to make that work in a way that, again, did not just basically handcuff who they were as an organization for the next 3 years. So, yeah, any move, even if it was a fringy one that you liked and went, oh, God, I wish they were in on that one.
Honestly, not really, and that's not a cop out. It's just because, Zubac is the kind of guy where if somehow they could have turned Pirtle into Zubac long term, even with maybe a first round under, I could see it. But like Zubac went for 2 firsts,
Yeah.
one of which could be like a top 10 pick this year. So if you had told me that's the kind of deal that would need to get Zubac in here, would I have done it? No. I know you were mentioning Ayo Dosunmu. I think that's a really good deal for Minnesota
Yeah.
because he helps at worst quasi contender right now. And also they're one of those teams like they're capped out. Dosunmu's a pending free agent. That's the kind of player Minnesota likely would not have been able to get in the offseason. So they kind of do the Brandon Ingram thing the Raptors did last year, right? Pre-agency. Well, we'll trade for him now, get his bird rights. We can exceed the cap to retain him. And now we as Minnesota, who wouldn't have been able to get a player of this caliber in the offseason, have now just added a player of, a pretty good, really efficient scoring reserve to a contending team. I don't think those moves would have made as much sense for the Raptors. Even the Sumo, who I like, do I really want to start giving up assets if I'm the Raptors? If I'm being self-aware about where they are for an Ayo Dosunmu, probably not. So I don't think there were any deals out there that made me think, oh, I really wish the Raptors would have pulled that one off. And in fact, I'll even throw in too, because we were talking about, the not having the surplus picks. How having all your own picks is good and it can get you in the mix for a star trade, but then it kind of handcuffs you after that. the other thing too is it's not just that the Raptors didn't have surplus picks. It's also that, the medium salaries or whatever you want, medium to kind of large salaries that a lot of teams use to execute those kinds of trades have to be either expiring or contracts other teams will take on without having to attach much value to them. Again, not really the case for the Raptors because quickly, deal is too long. Pirtle, we know all about the risks with that contract, and we're seeing it play out before our eyes. So it's like the Raptors, other than Ochai Agbaji's expiring, which what you weren't going to get much for, and they still had to attach a second to it, they were in this weird spot where it's like, oh, we have all these medium salaries and we have all of our picks that puts us in the running to do a lot of things. Well, really, if no teams around the league want any of your medium salaries and you don't have the surplus picks to, keep the powder dry after making that move, you actually don't have the maneuverability that you thought you did.
Yeah. Again, there wasn't really anything that I saw where I went, oh, maybe they should have done that. I did have a brief moment where I thought, man, that AD value is so low. Could you have gotten there somehow? And no, not really. Dosumu, though, I would have tried to do. And I get what you're saying in terms of where they're at and moving assets in, but that's the reason why I like that trade for Minnesota is, yes, it's pre-agency, but they gave up 4 second-round picks. So if you were the Raptors and you didn't have to move off of all your second-round picks to dump Ochai and grab I'm never going to get this guy's name right. It's Trace Jackson Davis.
Correct, yeah.
I would have done, if they would have been interested in, say, Grady Dick as the redraft candidate, the way that they were in Dillingham, and you said you could move off of Grady Dick and trade 4 second-round picks for a guy of Desumu's caliber who shoots as well as he does. Like, he's 45% from 3 this year.
Yeah.
And
it's a bit of I think it might be a bit of an aberration. I don't think he's this good of a shooter, but to your point, he's a very consistent, efficient scorer.
Yeah. And 26 years old, gives you another ball handling option late in games where they need someone who can bring the ball up the floor. So I just looked at him and said, I do wonder what their calls were on him and how much of that trade for the Bulls was about they actually really like Dillingham and they think that there's more there to give rather than what the Raptors would have had. Anyways, other trades. Was there a trade that you really liked, the trade that you liked the most?
Yeah, I mean, I kind of just touched on it, but that Jaren Jackson deal I really liked for Utah because Utah's a team that has accumulated a lot of young talent. They wouldn't budge on marketing even though they're a rebuilding team. And now all of a sudden you can see the vision where it's like, whatever happens the rest of this year, whether they keep their top 8 protected pick or not, if they do, they're going to add another really good young player to a core that already has Keontae George and Lauri Markkanen and Walker Kessler, who's not playing the rest of the year. Like, they now all of a sudden add Jaren Jackson, and it's like, okay, it's go time next year, but we really haven't mortgaged any of the future to get there because, again, most of what they gave up was just surplus draft capital that they had been accumulating while rebuilding and tanking. So I know some people maybe thought the price was steep or they don't like that Jaren Jackson contract, whatever. I think it's a good deal for Utah. I think they have the maneuverability to still do more as the team gets better in the next year or two. So, yeah, I love that deal for Utah for a team that over the last couple of years has been frisky and has kind of been too good to tank, and they've found a way to do it anyway.
Yeah, I didn't mind that move at all. My only, I guess, little reservation as to why it wasn't the number one trade I liked was I try to imagine their front court picture with those 3 guys, and it's difficult to see. And while you're right that they didn't move all in on their future to get this guy, if you're a Utah fan and you're thinking about all the years of tanking and just bad basketball you've watched, right? Because that has to be considered in all this when we're discussing tanking stuff. Is like, the fan bases have to go through this where their product is unwatchable for year after year after year. I could see a Utah fan being a little underwhelmed with the idea of like, wait, we're taking this step forward now, and it's with these pieces that we're not really sure exactly how they're going to fit together. All right. I ultimately, though, I think you're right. The price that they paid was, to me, when I first saw it, it was 3 first-round picks, and I went, Utah picks? Now I look at it, and I'm like, yeah, this was a fine risk to take. The one that I like the most, and I hate to admit this because I don't like giving the Thunder any credit, was them grabbing Jared McCain for what was just kind of a flyer pick. They went, well,
first and 3 seconds, I think, or first and 2 seconds, something like that.
Yeah, listen, he went down to the G League this year, and I know the Sixers had some depth now at this position that was kind of blocking him. But if you ask me, hey, bet on one trade that 2 years from now, we're going, can you believe they made this trade out of everything that was made? That's the one.
Yeah, I love that deal for them too. I think that's a great pick. McCain, like his good, I'm putting it in quotes, his good rookie year that we are all very excited about was 23 games. So there's that to keep in perspective. And he's been really bad this year. But I'm with you. I think at worst, the Thunder added a weapon off the bench. He might not even play every night, but
No.
he is a weapon they have on the bench on what is already the best team in the league. And I think when you combine that move, kind of a buy low, but high reward type move for the best team in the league, with the fact that their biggest competitors did squat. To me, the Thunder are the winners of this deadline, and people might not want to hear that, or they might think that's boring, but unfortunately live with it, because that's the world we live in. It's OKC's world right now, and we're all living in it. They got a little better. None of their biggest competitors did anything of significance. And oh, by the way, the Clippers pick that they own just got a lot more valuable because they lost Harden and Zubac and brought on Darius Garland, who will be a better long-term fit, but has been in and out of the lineup with a toe injury.
Yeah.
So the Thunder just won this deadline on a number of levels.
Well, I just think too, if you watch Thunder games, as I sit here in my Sonics hat, they don't have a lot of guys who are reliable shooters. And I think about McCain around the guys they have, and I think he's going to be able to shoot. And he has shot in the NBA. Yep. And just the floor spacing that you're going to be able to get from him in certain lineups, it actually adds something that the Thunder didn't have. Like the team that has it all didn't really have a lot of guards who can shoot the three reliably, and now I think they're going to end up getting one who, will probably. My prediction is he's going to be making big shots for them. Maybe not this year in the playoffs, but in the future in the playoffs, that guy's going to be a real threat from deep. Move that confused you the most.
Oh, I probably what Washington did, and again, that's not even hating on the deal because, as I mentioned, they didn't give up any of their own picks, so it's kind of a buy low thing. But in totality, even if you go back to the Trae Young trade, for a rebuilding, tanking team as bad as Washington is, as far away as they are from contention, to set themselves up to have Anthony Davis and Trae Young, depending on what happens with Trae's option or his next extension, but having those two guys taking up to 65% of the cap next season, those moves, the AD move in general, it confused me, not because I think they paid too much, but just because it seemed like such a nonsensical destination for both those guys and for AD in particular. If they stay healthy, they could be competitive next year, but we know how that goes. Like Anthony Davis, there's no evidence that he's going to stay healthy. Trae Young has a player option. He could test free agency, and we know the issues that come with him. Like in a perfect world, Trae Young and Anthony Davis actually are a really good duo. Anthony Davis can paper over some of Trae Young's deficiencies. They have young talent there. They could get another good pick in the draft. It could all come together, and they look like geniuses a year from now. I just think if you want to talk about confusion for where Washington is right now, even if it was low risk and buying low, to add Anthony Davis and Trae Young to the mix and all of a sudden go into next year being like, well, we got to try to win now, it's strange.
Yeah, I'm going to defend the AD trade, though, because for them, I actually really like it under the assumption he doesn't have to sign the extension for this reason. If you're Washington and you've got those surplus picks and you grabbed him for a song and you have the cap space and he's going to come in and he's not going to play, so he's not going to ruin your tank, to me, you get to let him get healthy, show up next year where he's still under contract, play it out, and if he is healthy and you're just the Wizards and you're not really taking a step forward and you don't feel like, hey, an extension, which you probably shouldn't, I just feel like the odds of them being able to recoup on like assets better than what they gave out for him are like, that's plausible to me. All of a sudden next year at the deadline, if they're shopping a healthy Anthony Davis, you're telling me they're not going to do better than the Thunder first rounder and another late first? I think they will.
No, that's fair, and that's also why, even though I I wasn't high on the Raptors getting him. One of the things I was saying in the last few weeks in defense of a potential AD move rather than a Sabonis one was that I wasn't convinced that you had to give him an extension that that automatically came with trading for him. Like, I just looked at it as like, just look at AD on this deal. And yes, the number is crazy and he's overpaid in the meat, but whatever. You have him for a year and a half while you desperately need a center. Don't worry about the future. If you can get that guy for a first, maybe even a first and a second protected one, and you also find a way to ditch Pirtle's cheaper but longer term contract, which is more damaging than a lot of money in the short term, to me, that actually would have been worth it for the Raptors. Again, the problem is it ended up taking 3 first-round picks, and Washington could do that without having to dip into any of their own. So Washington makes that deal, which we both think was fine. And they're still looking at me like, oh, and guess what? We still have all our picks. If it doesn't work out and we have to tank, we still get a good player next year.
For me, it was Kuminga for Kristaps. I just looked at that and said, I don't know what either of you are doing and how this works for each side, because Kristaps doesn't play. And also, I can't. If you had to tell me, hey, take a lottery of players you think are going to piss off Draymond Green, I would have picked Kristaps Porzingis for sure in the top 10. And then the converse side is Kuminga, a guy who wants minutes and wants a expanded role. You're going to put him next to Jalen Johnson, and this is going to be a fit for. I do not think that's going to work for the Atlanta Hawks, and that the Kuminga path was what it is for Michael Porter Jr., where it was, go to one of the worst teams in the league and have the ball in your hand a ton and see if there's a little bit more there. Like, for each side, I viewed it as a loss.
Yeah, I agree with that. And, the one thing is with MPJ, not the athlete that Kuminga is, but at least that guy can shoot and can score. And there's, always going to be a premium on that. Kuminga can kind of score in bunches, but cannot shoot. Not the defender that you would assume he is with the explosiveness that he has. Kind of a net negative player. And so I don't really know where his career goes from here. But to your point about the confusion, I think this also gets back to how the Warriors also mismanaged the situation. It's like
massively.
There are faults on Kuminga's side, and I think he needs some self-awareness to know what type of player he is and isn't, because the reporting makes it seem like he thinks he's still a budding star, and he is not. So there's obviously fault on his part too, but the Warriors mismanaged the situation too and did nothing to help his trade value. And I've honestly been laughing the last couple of days reading some Warriors stuff about how they got, they pivoted from Giannis and they got a veteran former all-star floor spacing because he doesn't play. He's got this mystery illness. He's got POTS, like an illness you can go read about that seems to be kind of a chronic thing. Just came back from an Achilles injury as well. He's never healthy.
Never.
Even if he is healthy, he barely moves the needle for that Warriors team that still doesn't have Jimmy Butler. So
that's right.
I've been kind of laughing reading the about-face Warriors people are trying to spin on that move.
That's the biggest part of it for me with Golden State is just how horrifically the 2 timelines thing worked for them. The idea, and listen, let this be a lesson to the Raptors, who also botched their 2 timelines thing. But what a different world we'd be living in if the Raptors and the Warriors both at the same time decided 2 timelines wasn't working, and Siakam had gone to the Golden State Warriors. Kuminga had come back to the Raptors when he was still younger, but also a whole bunch of other assets that it would have taken to make that trade happen, right? Like a bunch of other Warriors first to the Raptors, how much better both franchises would have been positioned moving forward. Because, you played that out too, and the Raptors, a couple of years ago, they're going further into a tank and into a rebuild and maybe acquiring more assets than ones that they're putting out the door. So those 2 teams, they're going to be weirdly married from not only did you play in a finals, but you two were actually each other's way out of 2 timelines, and you couldn't get it done all because the Warriors didn't want Kuminga and the Raptors didn't want to just sell off pieces for picks, and it ended up screwing up both of them. Last thing, Giannis puts out the tweet, "I'm not leaving. Legends don't chase, they attract," end quote.
This guy.
He's leaving. There's no way he's staying this offseason, right?
No, this guy.
Yeah.
Listen,
why would he do this?
One way he might stay, and this is one thing I have been putting out there a lot, is so he's eligible for that 4-year, $275 million extension October 1st or 6 months after he gets traded if it's with another team. He is a non-shooting giant whose game is reliant on athleticism and explosiveness, and who has a history of calf injuries now and has missed quite a bit of time the last 4 or 5 years. Obviously, it's Giannis Antetokounmpo. You take that guy and you try to win the championship with him. But that extension will cover his age 33 to 36 seasons. And given the type of player I just described, I'm not so convinced that every team around the league would be willing to spend 35% of the cap each year for Giannis' age 33 to 36 seasons. And so there is a path, I think, to him staying in Milwaukee, and that path would be if for whatever reason Giannis and his camp start catching wind that the only team willing to give him that kind of money and the only team he's actually worth it, to is the team he's trying to leave. So there is a path. I'll never say never. But no, for the most part, I don't think he'll be there. I think he knows that, and that's what makes all of the kind of BS we've been hearing from him so, it's entertaining but also kind of annoying because you can go back to when he did the whole thing so that he's not looking like the bad guy. Oh, the fans are booing me. No, they're not. They're booing the team, and you know that. Talking about how I don't want out, but I want to compete for championships. But also reportedly, I don't want to do it on someone else's team as the secondary star. And, I'll never demand a trade, but also I can change my mind as quickly as I change my breakfast choices, which is basically what he said last month. And now this, where it's like, well, I never said I'm going to leave, and I'm going to put the Wolf of Wall Street clip up there and say I'm never leaving. And what did it say? Talent attracts, or legends attract, they don't chase. Buddy, I hate to break it to you, you're not attracting anyone to Milwaukee, and you're especially not doing now when you guys have no asset.
Yeah.
So
you attracted Miles Turner on a horrible contract.
Yeah, exactly. Maybe if everything breaks right, they get the worst of theirs in New Orleans pick, and it ends up being the second pick. Yeah. Maybe if they get the second pick in this draft, and Giannis thinks they're the only team willing to actually give him the $275 million, then maybe he just stays there and he finishes his career there. But I don't see it. I think he's going to move, and it's just going to make all this BS that he has said in the last couple of weeks look even more ridiculous when that move happens.
Yeah, that's it. I feel like this has been a bit of a PR disaster for a guy that was really trying to avoid exactly that. Like him, again, same thing as two timelines. He's tried to do two different things at once, and usually that doesn't really work out in your favor. And, it was really sad to me that you're like, the only way he stays is if it's the darkest timeline where Giannis is just washed up, and we have to watch a max player end his days in Milwaukee. And then fans also resent him because they go, we could have had stuff for you, and you selfishly took the money and just whittled down the days here. I guess he gets the championship, so he'll always have that. Joe Casciaro of theScore, good luck with the internet. Thanks for making time today, buddy.
Appreciate it, man. We'll talk soon.
Yeah, see you, pal. You can subscribe to this podcast, Apple, Spotify, Amazon Music. Please leave a review if you do that. We'll take a quick break. I want to talk about Team Canada's culture, the Seth Jarvis move. Watching Hagel fill in Chuck. Despite the Olympics being right around the corner, you go, could you get hurt? Could you be the third Lightning player hurt? Doesn't matter. Chuck him. Hit him where it hurts. Win a fight. Loved that. Also loved Brayden Point and think that he deserves a lot of credit. And that if Canada has success at these Olympics and Seth Jarvis contributes for this team, people should remember that Brayden Point made that sacrifice. Clearly, he was not 100%, but he was skating. He was giving things a go and did the right thing, which is, hey, I'm going to put the country first. And I really do believe, I think that this is a Canadian hockey thing. I don't know how hurt he was. Maybe this happens to more players given where he's at. But that self-sacrifice, when you haven't played in an Olympics, when you've been waiting all season for this thing, and we know how much it means to all these players, to park that and do what's better for the country, better for the team, that's Canada hockey. I don't know if that would have happened with a bunch of other players from other places. If they were 80%, if they would have just said, yeah, I want to give this a go there. I think I'm going to get better. Hey, games aren't for a week. Maybe just be able to sort this out. I don't know. But I think he deserves a lot of credit for him. The Seth Jarvis pick, to me, is fairly controversial. I know he has had a better second half. How he can kill penalties. I would have taken Hyman. I did a whole pod with Chris Versteeg doing, hey, here's the candidates, and I didn't even really have Jarvis on the radar because I thought it was so obviously going to be Hyman, considering Point had played with McDavid at the Four Nations, and it just seemed like a seamless fit to me. So a bit of a risk by Team Canada, even though it looks like the safer move, taking the guy that you have the familiarity with. But yeah, I got to say, at this point with Zach Hyman and what I thought he was in terms of how close he seemed to the bubble, to have two injury replacements and he doesn't seem to be in the mix. Bit of a shot at the guy. Either way, good luck to Seth Jarvis. I'm happy for him. Go Canada, go. Quick break, and it's time for the Seahawks Hour and Super Bowl props. So before we talk a little football, breaking news. Huge breaking news. Buck Martinez has retired. He has released a statement. It's on the Sportsnet. I'm sure it's on the website. There's a full press release on Sportsnet's Twitter account. I won't read the entire thing. It's better that you read it in your head and hear Buck's voice. But what an incredible career. And, he's been with the Blue Jays organization since 1981. It's almost 45 years connected to this franchise. I've said this many times, but Blue Jays fans have been spoiled to have him. If you watch a lot of other sports, you watch out of market baseball even, and I'm not, listen, I don't want to try to make this about other people not being great, but you hear the Blue Jays broadcast, and you compare it to some others, yeah, maybe comparison thief of joy, maybe that's not the way to do things, but it is materially way better. And Buck's ability to be doing play-by-play or to do the color and the insight and the experience that he has offered during his time as a broadcaster is unparalleled. He's forever a legend here. I think he will absolutely be put in the level of excellence. And now that the Blue Jays are doing statues, I actually don't think it's that far-fetched he would get one either. He has meant that much. He's the voice of this team for anybody that watched him on television for a very, very long time. Unanimously popular. That's actually one of the best compliments you could probably give Buck is if you watch games with friends, there's always somebody that has something to say about the color analyst or the play-by-play guy, right? There's always the broadcast critic. And have you ever sat down with friends and watched a Blue Jays game and had somebody complain about Buck? I can't think of a single time that has ever happened to me. And I watch every single Blue Jays game. The majority of them still on television, obviously. I go to a lot of games, but yeah, it's gonna be strange not having Buck Martinez call any games. It's gonna be strange that he's not going to be there for the 50th anniversary. But yeah, always gracious with the time. Someone who, like, doing this job, there's people who are pains in the asses to try to get to do this, flat out. Like, you feel like you're really bugging people, annoying people. And Buck Martinez is a snap answer, do it every single time, unless he legitimately cannot do it. So personally, thanks to him for all the times that he's donated his time to the show. I'm sure that he will be making appearances still throughout the 50th anniversary on some pods and on some radio shows and maybe the odd television, the odd TV hit. But yeah, one of the best to ever do it, and left a immensely difficult position for whoever has to fill his shoes because, yeah, it's just like the excitement, but also the balance of, hey, he really knows the team. He really knows the game, the amount of time that he put into the sport. And yeah, just the totality of information that Blue Jays fans have gleaned from Buck Martinez is incredible. So thank you, Buck. Truly. I mean that. Thank you for everything. Thank you for all the years. Thank you for the time that you gave the show. even though I'm almost positive you still don't really know my name, you're the man. Really good guy, really nice guy. So thank you, Buck Martinez. It is Super Bowl week. It is Super Bowl Sunday. And I've mentioned this a few times on the show that I don't really like to do too much Seahawks because, one, we live in Canada and everybody cheers for different teams. And I like having my fandom be my fandom in this regard because, yeah, football is the one sport where it's not also my job. And so while I am still a fan of these teams, I try not to be an over the top homer. I try not to be what I view as listen, there's a lot of people who just like to be negative for the sake of being negative, and there's lots of people who like to do what I call toxic positivity, where they believe that talking about their team in nothing short of glowing terms is the only way to do things. And I personally think that's actually a lot of the way that media is going now. If you look at, yeah, um, a lot of the products around teams, they're very focused on positive, 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 and that's the way forward. And yeah, I think that that's its own kind of negativity. I try to do the thing as real as possible, but that complicates my relationships with being just a fan at times with the Toronto teams in particular. That's why I'm really looking forward to the Olympics is I can just be a fan of Team Canada. Like I can just really put the full-throated, I'm just rooting for this thing and like fan. I'm a fan. I'm in the bars. I'm with friends. It's going to be great. Seahawks, I get the same thing. I don't have to cover them for a living. I got to splash in some stuff. I'm clearly biased, but I love sitting down on Sunday and just watching my team play, just like the rest of you, my fantasy football team and my sports betting, all that different stuff. But yeah, I'm a dyed-in-the-wool Seahawks fan. Uh, I don't think that they get nearly the attention that they should have. And I often criticize fans in this market for feeling that way because there's such a large ecosystem now in this country of people who cover the Raptors, the Blue Jays, and the Maple Leafs, or whatever Canadian team that you root for, that you kind of don't need the other people who don't pay as much attention to your team in the States validating the stuff that you're seeing. It's nice to get a fresh set of eyes on things, but this Seahawks season was pretty overlooked. It really was. They had this incredible defense led by what is a very, very special coach. And right now, pound for pound, the best general manager in all of football. I know that everybody like loves to do the Howie Roseman thing. Oh, the Eagles and Howie. Ooh, yeah, he should be there. But I don't think John Schneider gets talked about that way. And yeah, they are tucked away in the Pacific Northwest and doesn't do the same amount of clicks. But this has been an unbelievable season. They were absolutely stuck in where is it that we're going here land. Like I talked about the Raptors and how, to me, one of the worst things when you are a fan now in modern sports because we have so much information and the leagues are so flat is when you aren't going to be bad enough to be able to acquire the pieces that you need, but you're just not good enough to be able to win. So every year is kind of, okay, what's the step forward here? Like what are the victories that we're looking for? And Seattle made a move that now everyone is talking about, but to me is one of the greatest sports stories I'll ever get to enjoy, which is the Sam Darnold decision. And I want to go back to how this happened, which is year after year, Geno Smith was the quarterback of the Seattle Seahawks in the post-Russell Wilson era. And it was this annoying debate nonstop between nerds and people who just watched the game. Hey, Geno, he's the redraft candidate. It was a New York Jets situation as well. He spins it. Oh, look at these advanced metrics. And you'd watch the game and it was like, man, he's just not the guy. And he came up for a contract extension. Seattle offered him a raise. It's been reported now by people like Jeff Darlington. And Geno said that's not enough. So Seattle decides to move him to the the Vegas Raiders. And at the time, most of the world exploded when they signed Sam Darnold. The Mina Kimeses went, this is nuts. You got worse at the quarterback position. The stats people went, look at Geno's advanced metrics and look at Sam Darnold and how could you make such a move? This is a huge step back, even though, again, Seattle added a draft pick. and they added a quarterback who made less money. And certainly when Geno signed that contract, people went, you really wouldn't give Geno Smith that deal? And then we saw how things played out with Geno, granted on a bad Raiders team, but still, he was one of the worst quarterbacks in football this year, and Sam Darnold's playing in the freaking Super Bowl. You had guys like Cam Newton when the Seahawks signed Sam Darnold saying Justin Fields is a better player than Sam Darnold. The world had essentially given up on that guy because of the way that he performed with the Minnesota Vikings in 2 games last year after winning 13. Vikings fans wanted him out. And what did I say at the very beginning of the season? You can go back and run the tape. This is really stupid of Minnesota. They should bring him back. Putting the car keys in J.J. McCarthy's hands feels a little early when you have this. Let J.J. McCarthy win the job. Franchise tag him. Force him to be here. Keep Sam Darnold. Nope. Ends up a Seattle Seahawk. And now he has a chance to be in a draft class that has Lamar Jackson and Josh Allen and win a Super Bowl before them. The guy that was famous for seeing ghosts might be hosting a Lombardi trophy. He's a 4.5-point favorite, which scares me, by the way. No Seahawks fan wants to be in the position where, I don't think any sports fan wants to be in a position where they're the heavy favorites and everyone's like counting you as the winner. I hate that. And that's actually been one of the most uncomfortable things in this lead up for me is I've been getting like congratulations on a Super Bowl ahead of this actually happening. This could be a tough game. I think it's going to be a low scoring game. And I think that New England is probably not getting enough respect. 2 things can be true. I don't think their path was that difficult. And I think that this whole notion of, well, they beat all these great defenses. Yeah, they didn't score a ton on these defenses. They weren't lighting them up. Then what's the point of saying it's all that impressive when you beat the 3 quarterbacks that you beat with the offensive lines that they had? But the Patriots are a good football team. They're well coached. They got a really good defense. They've got a quarterback that I think could have and maybe should have won the MVP. So that part stinks. I will say I feel a little bit better now, though, because New England fans were publicly celebrating the Emanuori injury. And that's just real tough karma. That's real tough karma. That swings the karmaic gods to me just a little tiny bit. You had like Barstool Sports putting out, look at everything's turning up Patriots. Look at this guy limping, going to the hotel. I think he's going to be fine. He mentioned it's a low ankle sprain. He's moving around media day. They're going to be careful with him at practice. And yeah, maybe he's not 100%, but the fact that they're going to have him out on the football field is huge for them. But yeah, I could not be happier for, like, one, the defense and bringing in veteran players the way that they did with Leonard Williams, the way that they did with, well, honestly, like this whole team, if you look at it even beyond like the DeMarcus Lawrence's, like the first round picks that they nailed, like the general manager, John Schneider, did such a good job. That's what I'm saying, is that he now enters the Howie Roseman conversation of best general manager in all of sports. And that is one thing that is special about football is like, you just need a couple special drafts and you're right in it. You're right there, but you can't win without the quarterback. And Seattle got a guy that the entire world doubted, that the entire world clowned on, and that even fan bases that watched him win 13 games with them said, we don't want you here. Goes to Seattle, and now he's got a chance to do something special, and I genuinely cannot wait. And it's weird. Like, I'm a grown-ass man, and the idea that I like feel like proud of someone who's a professional athlete is not common anymore. I'm like, yeah, you make tens of millions of dollars. You've got a very enviable life, all this different stuff. But yeah, man, how can you not feel proud for Sam Darnold? So yeah, there will be, I'm going to, yeah. Patriots fans, you've had enough. You've had enough. You've done enough. And I've had to endure watching the Malcolm Butler interception for 2 weeks now. I've hated every minute of it. It's never felt better. It's never gotten better. So yeah, go Hawks. I can't wait for this game. And yeah, I do believe, which is uncomfortable, that they are going to win. All right, here's the other thing that stinks about being in a Super Bowl, is that you don't really have as much fun sports betting because you're too stressed about the game. So like, I don't want to place a bet down on the Seahawks. They're my own team. And now all the money's coming in on them, which again is terrifying. But yeah, you just don't really think about it. But I did. I put together a bunch of props that, because this is the time of year, it's your last chance to make some bets on football, and I'm going to do those things. So my favorite long shots for MVP, because everybody picks the quarterbacks, and that is the right way to do it. And I've said this a million times. If you're going to bet the favorite, just bet the quarterback to win Super Bowl MVP. Way better position to be in from an odds standpoint. I think Sam Darnold's plus 105, and the Seahawks are like minus 227. The last I looked on the money line. They're minus 4.5. That's too many points for me in a Super Bowl, again, against a good team. I think it's a little disrespectful, but I like both these odds. Plus 10,000 for each of these players, DeMarcus Lawrence and Leonard Williams. Patriots offensive line, we talked about it with Jeff yesterday. It is suspect. It's got a lot of young pieces, a lot of unproven pieces, and Drake May has not had an easy road when it comes to the amount of hits that he's taken. 15 sacks so far over the course of this run. I think both these defenses are good, and I could absolutely see a scenario where Sam Darnold only throws one touchdown pass in this game. He throws for something like 200 yards, and if the Seahawks win, they don't really look at the quarterback and say, hey, he's going to be the guy to get it. I believe they're going to try to really take away JSN from the Seahawks, that they're going to go old school Patriots, and that he might have a tougher day, especially with Christian Gonzalez, who I really respect. And when I think about that offensive line, everyone's going to focus in on, I would think, DeMarcus Lawrence, because he's going to be playing against Will Campbell, but Leonard Williams has had just as many sacks this season. He could absolutely be a game wrecker. I think if you get a guy in this game who has 2 sacks, a forced fumble, a fumble recovery in a low-scoring game, there's absolutely a path there for either of those guys. So plus 10,000 for those Super Bowl odds for either of those guys, I like. Here's another one. Jason Myers, the kicker for the Seattle Seahawks. Seahawks, sneaky, not the best red zone team. They're 14th. New England's 22nd in red zone scoring. So I like taking the combined kicking points in this game. I also think that it's worth a bit of a long shot of plus 19,000 on a kicker making a 60-yard field goal or more. Neither of these kickers has done that all season long. Myers does have a big leg. I don't know as much about the Patriots kicker. He is longest this season, I believe, is 57. But again, low-scoring game, Super Bowl, end of a half. The way that kicker's been kicking this year, I just think that that's kind of worth it, that one of these teams would do this. Both coaches, I believe, are going to be a little bit more conservative with fourth down calls because they've got the defenses they've got. But I could absolutely see in a game like this somebody kicking a long one. But yeah, I especially like the odds on Myers, to a guy who kicks for an average of 10 points a game, to hit his over of 8.5. By the way, both teams to make a field goal over 34 yards is minus 140. I like that. JSN, he's 35 yards away from 2,000 on the season. If you bet him to hit that number in the second quarter, it's plus 135. I like that one. Just maybe thinking he ends up them not getting the ball in the first quarter. I think by the second, he's going to end up with that one. Next, if you like the Seattle Seahawks, which is the only way that I would be doing this, team to win both halves, Seattle plus 200. Like this too. I just said, hey, I think both teams are going to be a little conservative on fourth down, but the way that the league is going this season, both teams' successful fourth down conversion is plus 150. Something to be considered. New England first TD type. Rushing is plus 145. You think about Drake May's legs. You think about the 2 running backs. I like that one as a plus money pick. Seahawks, sneaky bottom 10 versus tight ends this season. Hunter Henry over 38.5 yards, minus 105. Also this. Seattle's the only team in the NFL this season with 6 players who generated at least 6 or 30 pressures. So I like the sack props more than I like touchdown props. If you just look at some of these TD props, like I looked at Hunter Henry, he's like plus 220. AJ Barnes plus 220. There's not really a ton of value there. You got to either take dudes who really don't score, or they've completely juiced out the guys who can score touchdowns. Like Kenneth Walker's a minus number. Ramondre Stevenson is a minus number. DeMarcus Lawrence plus 110 for a sack. But I like this one more. Chenna Nwosu. He had just as many sacks this season as DeMarcus Lawrence, and he's plus 210. So give me that one. Those are my Seahawks props. Those are my Super Bowl props. Take them for what you will. Again, my betting is going to be far, far, far lower than it normally is during a Super Bowl. As I mentioned at the top of the hour, Buck Martinez is retiring. almost 45 years connected to the organization. Incredible career. Blue Jays fans unbelievably spoiled over his tenure. And the man who was last in the booth with him, Dan Shulman, he joins us now from the airport, just getting it in. What's up, buddy? Can you hear me?
I can hear you loud and clear. You got me?
Yeah, I got you. Hey, thanks for doing this. It's great to have you, and I think people especially want to hear your voice today on this. So, yeah, Buck does retire. I'm sure he gave you the heads up that you didn't find out like the rest of us. But, yeah, what are you feeling today now that that's official?
A lot of different things. I mean, it was, it was a million years ago, or 31 years ago to be exact, and it was at TSN, not at Sportsnet, when I did my first ever baseball game for the Toronto. Well, my first ever baseball game, and it happened to be for the Toronto Blue Jays, and Buck Martinez was my partner. Like, that's how long we've known each other, and we worked for 6 years together then, and then he became the manager, and then I went to ESPN, and then he went to Baltimore, and then he came back, and then I came back. So there was a gap, but between the two different stints I've been here, I've worked with him, I think, for 16 or 17 years, and there's no better person in the game. Everything that everybody feels about him is completely warranted. Behind the scenes, we here that work with him all the time feel even stronger. I tweeted something out, so some of my thoughts are there, but no one cared more. No one worked harder. No one treated people better. I was 28 years old when I got the job back in 1995, and he was already Buck Martinez. He had a 17-year career, and he was near the beginning of his broadcasting career, but he couldn't have been more helpful and welcoming to me. And I'll never forget, I did the audition, and eventually, a couple of months later, got the job. And I think we were down in spring training, getting ready to do our first spring training game, and he just looked at me and he said, "If we can make this sound like two guys sitting in a bar watching a ball game, having a beer, we're going to do okay." And I say that in my head to myself seconds before every game begins. And, we were lucky. We have, we've always had just a kind of a great chemistry and connection. He knows what I'm thinking. I know what he's thinking. And I was blessed for many, many years to have him as a broadcast partner.
Yeah, the broadcast has always been top notch with the two of you. And I think what you said there about his level of care, that's the thing that really does stand out to me. Is just how there's never been a year where it's felt like, oh man, he didn't put the work in, or he doesn't have the same passion for the sport. Like, it always is this incredible amount of exuberance, but also information. And I wonder, from your perspective, working with someone like that, give me a little bit of the day-to-day of what it is like working with Buck Martinez.
It's beyond impressive, because whether it's a May game against the Kansas City Royals or Game 7 of the World Series, he is putting the same level of effort in. He is down on the field and around the cage more than anybody I've ever worked with. And I've worked with a lot of people over the years. And part of it was because he wanted to do the best job he could. Like, that's a huge part of it. And nobody grinded more than he did. Part of it was he just loved it. He just loved being on the field and talking to coaches and players on both teams. He would come up and he would say, "I got the greatest story about Vinny Pasquantino you ever heard." Like, he was like a kid in a candy store, just so excited to do that. He loved doing the games, but honestly, I think just as much, if not even a little bit more, he loved the 2 or 3 hours before the game where he could just go talk baseball with people. And I've never seen anything like it. I've never seen a guy whose energy never wanes, whose work ethic never changed, et cetera, et cetera. He's one of a kind.
Yeah. How many times did you think about just, hey, like, maybe I should give him more play-by-play?
Well, I don't know. I mean, he was color at the beginning with me, and then he was play-by-play when I came back, and then I can't do color, right? I don't have that skill set. So, but everybody will always fondly remember Get Up Ball and all of that, and I totally get it. And I just, big picture, for him to have been a part of this for so many years and to have touched so many lives. And the other thing I get to see too is when, people bump into him on the concourse or the hotel lobby or anything, outside of visiting ballpark, couldn't be nicer, couldn't have more time. Like, who people think he is who he is. That's exactly it. And, if you get out what you put in, he put in a ton and he got out a ton. And I know, I don't know if you've read the statement on the air. I assume you've seen the statement. So he's just so grateful for everything and so appreciative of the fans. He knows in a humble way how much he means to everybody. He and Arlene decided it's time. So it's not going to feel the same without him. That's for sure.
Yeah. I know you're short on time, so you can just tell me whenever you got to go, and just jump off the air. The reason why, like, I was joking about him doing the play-by-play, though, is that, like, you are a Hall of Fame broadcaster. Like, it's an incredibly difficult job to do, and the fact that this guy could do both those things, I'm wondering if you can speak to just the difficulty level and the amount of ability that actually takes, that you can be that versatile and do both those jobs.
Yeah, there's no question, because they're not like similar. They're very, very, very different.
Right.
And he was great at both. So I loved, when I worked with, and I don't know how many games, I can think just in a few seconds here. I mean, it's I don't know how many games we did, but it was a lot. But, just knowing that anything could happen on the field, anything. And I could turn to him and I could say, however I phrased my question, or an anecdote that I knew he would remember. And then, like you said, for a number of years, he was doing play-by-play as well, with no prior experience doing that. Like, it's not like he went back to a broadcasting program in the winter. And so, I mean, he just, at that time, there was an opening, I guess. And I was full-time ESPN, so I wasn't here, I wasn't privy to all the inside details, but and he made that his own too. So it's incredible. He's unique. He's special. And he loves Toronto and Canada and everybody associated with this team as much as they love him.
Yeah, they do love him. And we saw a lot of that outpouring this season. And certainly when there's been already, like, this is now we're over a year removed from conversations about him one day being in the level of excellence. I do think that that's a lock to happen, that he will be honored by this team, that he will always be a mainstay with this team. I guess, right before you go, I guess, is there, you mentioned already you coming in as a young broadcaster and how overwhelming that must have been, and having someone who, when you're starting your career, helps you really just, get your feet wet and is a comforting source. But is there anything else that, you really think of when you think about Buck that we didn't hit on?
I mean, his level of care, we talked about it, and his level and his work ethic, we talked about too. I don't want to overstate it, but I just want to reemphasize, he did not treat a May game in Kansas City any different than a World Series game. He treated every single game the same. I'll tell you one other thing. So if we say, we might take one of the team buses to the ballpark, we might take an Uber, we might walk over. It depends on the city, right? On everything's a little bit different. And let's say 500 times in my life, he and I made a time to meet. I was never late, but I was always second. If we said 3:15, I was down there at 3:11. I don't know when he got down, but I never beat him down. I mean, he could not wait to get to the ballpark. He loved it. Like, this was a passion for him that happened to also be his livelihood. It was never a job. He never treated it like a job. And I think everybody, who has watched him for so many years felt that at home.
Dan, thanks so much for sharing your perspective. I know you got a flight to catch. I really appreciate you making a few minutes here to jump on and share some stories and some thoughts.
You got it. He's worth it. And I agree with you about the level of excellence. I believe that's coming as well, and richly deserved. And of all the people who feel lucky to have known him and worked with him, I might be at the top of the list, because I got to sit beside him for a long, long time, and very, very grateful I did.
Thanks, Dan. I appreciate this.
All right, JD. See you, man.
Be well, man. Safe travels.
Bye.
I think that there's some lessons to be gleaned from that. One is just the level. You can't really teach passion for a thing. You either fall in love with it or you don't. But, man, if you love what you do, throw yourself into it. And that is why Buck resonated for so long, is that what Dan's talking about the level of preparation and treating everything like it matters. That counts. The details matter. And from that, just like, hey, be punctual, work your ass off, take what you do seriously, and love it. And the reason why, to me, people felt so connected with Buck Martinez was not, hey, he was here a long time. It's because you could feel those things through the broadcast. You knew that he put the work in. There was always anecdotes about the opposing team. He knew as much about the opposing team, and still does, as he would the Blue Jays. He was still going down to the field. He was still trying to get to learn different things from different players, still taking in spring training games, like still doing as much of the work as he possibly could. And yeah, I don't think that you can teach that level of joy, but you should be able to appreciate it. You should be able to look back on something like that and be like, damn, that was pretty damn impressive. That's pretty unbelievable that a guy who has, again, been with the broadcast for as long as he has been with, it never felt tired. It never felt like, hey, this thing is done. He gets to go out on top. Blue Jays went to a World Series. City was at a fever pitch. People got to appreciate him. And I just, like, I think that's what you want at the end of a career, is what he's got, which is everyone appreciates just exactly how great he was at the job, how much he cared, but also the people around him, like the Dans, want to be able to speak about him in glowing fashion and share the things that it was like working with that guy. What's better than that? So, highly successful career, hit all the tops, hit all the peaks, was beloved by the people that listened to him, and the people that he worked with want to share their stories and their thoughts, their memories, and their, just overall experience of being around a guy. So, yeah, he's going to be tremendously missed with this broadcast. He's going to be a huge hole for Blue Jays fans moving forward. And yeah, I do think that there will be more celebrations to come for Buck Martinez because of exactly that. You spend 45 seasons linked to a franchise, and like that's the thing too. I'm really not trying to overstate this, but I work in a gossipy business. There's people speak for a living. There's a lot of people where you hear like a story. You go like, ooh, and you don't ever know if it's true or not or whatever until you experience it firsthand. I don't really like to do that personally. It's not really my bag. But I've never once heard a mean or bad or awful Buck Martinez story. And now I've been here for a long enough time. And in this building, like I've only been with Sportsnet my entire career. I started here as an intern. Don't have one. Never had an instance where heard about somebody being rude, or never heard an instance of someone saying they didn't like the guy, didn't hear an instance of like, not even a peep. Not even a little squeak of a peep. And I guess I wouldn't be saying it the other way around today, but I wouldn't also go out of my way to make that a point if it wasn't one that I thought was worth sharing. So yeah, prepare, be on time, work your ass off, be humble, and share your passion with other people. Try to mentor others when you can. Again, checked all the absolute boxes, and that's why you get to go up on a level of excellence, is because you were excellent. So thank you, Buck Martinez. All right. We are at the end of the show. We are at the end of the week. I do have my Seattle Seahawks in the Super Bowl. I cannot wait, although I could wait. I actually could wait. I could live in a time where I'm just trapped in the anticipation of the game and I don't have to actually watch it. Brandon Brown, what did we miss?
Well, I think we should do, let's do our Billy Talent read, I think, first before we get into it. Well, it's been a crazy day. What are you going to do?
I got to give tickets away. My laptop just died. I didn't plug it in last night. Whoops. Okay, this is not great. The iconic Canadian rock band Billy Talent is celebrating the 20th anniversary of their sophomore album, Billy Talent 2. And they're coming to RBC Amphitheater in Toronto on Saturday, July 18th. And we've got a pair of tickets to give away. Text the code words Punk Set to 59590 for your chance to win. Listen in Monday for our next code word and giveaway. If you don't win with us, tickets are now on sale at Ticketmaster. Contest open to Ontario residents only. Standard message and data rates may apply. I can't wait to go to that show. All right, now what did we miss?
Yeah, I wanted to ask you about this story from the other day. Jackson Hayes, Los Angeles Laker, was suspended for a game for just absolutely laying out the Washington Wizards mascot, who I found out is named Gee Whiz, which I thought was hilarious.
That is good. I didn't know that either.
Video went viral. Obviously, it looks like he loaded up to really give the mascot a piece of him, and just wanted to get your thoughts on what you think Hayes was thinking in that spot.
I think he was thinking what's the saying? He let the intrusive thought win?
Yeah.
That's it. Is who wouldn't want to truck stick a mascot? This is the Succession. I think it's the very first episode where we get introduced to Cousin Greg, where he's in the mascot outfit and the kids are beating on him. It's just there's something about when people put that mascot uniform on, we immediately forget that it's a human being inside the costume, and we view it like, well, they have padding. We just do whatever you want to them; they're going to be fine. There's very few mascots, I think, that get respect.
Yeah.
In that way, it's like you want to be able to bowl a mascot over. That is just a good feeling to have. And I cannot envision being how tall. He's 7 feet tall.
I believe so. Yeah.
He's a 7 foot tall guy. Like, imagine what this story would be. Like, this is what's crazy is even the suspension doesn't reflect that he's a human being inside the costume.
Yeah.
Because if this was a cheerleader and he just lowered the truck stick on a cheerleader, he'd be suspended for 20 games. If this was a civilian, 20 games. But because it's a mascot, the NBA went, well, we get it. We get why you would nail this guy on purpose, clearly. Like, we have video of it. He wants to hit the mascot.
Oh, yeah.
We all want to hit the mascot, okay? Mascots, we're sorry, but we just don't. You put the big fuzzy head on, your humanity is gone. You are just you become a piñata. That's what we view you as. We think, like, if you handed, what's the percentage of people on earth that if you handed them a baseball bat at a game, like a real bat, and you said you can hit the mascot with this baseball bat, would say, no, that's a human being inside of a costume. I'm not going to hit them with a baseball. I think it's not even 50-50. I think it's 60-40 people being like.
Maybe more.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. They're like, load up. They're going to give it like a full backswing to hit this mascot with a baseball bat. So, yeah, my real thought is just about that, which is we don't see them as human. We're so easily tricked. It takes one furry costume for us to completely take away someone's humanity and view them as someone we can abuse. So, sorry to the mascot, but also hilarious that this is a one-game suspension when, again, it's any other person. It's more. 100% it's more. What's next?
Jump back into baseball here. Tarek Skubal, American League Cy Young winner, he won his historic arbitration case with the Tigers. He'll be paid $32 million this year. The Tigers countered with $19 million. I kind of personally thought that the panel would probably rule with the team. I feel like that's kind of the way that we've seen things go.
They tried to lowball him way too low. Obviously, like there was an obvious screw up. I hope he did there's a famous Tim Lincecum story where when he showed up to arbitration, he put 2 Cy Youngs on the table as to why he should get paid. I think Tarek Skubal just should have done the same thing. So good for him. I don't really have a lot on this because I shared my thought yesterday. So it's just, I don't understand the line of thinking for the Tigers of we have to negotiate a contract extension with you for a record amount of money. Now we're going to go into an arbitration hearing where we try to nickel and dime you and talk about things that technically should make you a less valuable player. It just seems like such an absurd strategy for me. And yeah, I don't know. Nothing really got out, and there's still no reports that things were ugly. But I'll just tell you that okay, people can say all they want. You always get this from baseball writers, how it's like, oh, arbitration is just a part of the business. There's a ton of examples of players coming out of arbitration and not feeling as connected to the organization as they once did. So, yeah, I just don't know why you would even take that risk unless you knew you were going to win 100%, and they didn't. So it just looks so stupid on the Tigers. I'd be pissed off if I was a fan. What's next?
Fun story here coming out of the Super Bowl. There are 3 men who have been to every Super Bowl game since its inception. They are all from the Northeast, and the reason this story came up is that one of them is ending his streak after this weekend. So it is Don Chrisman from Kennebec, Maine.
I don't care about their names.
No?
No, I don't care about this story at all. Like, what's the point? Where are we going with this?
Well, would you start a streak like this,
No.
potentially? And is there any event every year that you would want to go to that you maybe haven't been to? Or, obviously now we got Olympics going on. Like, how does that play into it? That was kind of the thought.
Listen, my assumption here is that these guys are wealthy. If they can afford, because Super Bowls now are extremely expensive. So if you ask me, like, hey, what would you like to go to as an event over and over and over again? I certainly wouldn't choose this. I would choose using my great amount of wealth to be like in Monaco. And I'm a Monaco guy. I go for the F1 races and drink champagne although maybe just like you're rich, but that's wealthy. So I don't know. Yeah, I think that this is probably not going to be a popular take, but we're here. I don't think the people who go to all the games is a great personality trait. Like when they're like, and I don't mind where you're like, hey, you want to see every ballpark? That's cool. But when it's like the person who, like Marlins man,
Right.
I go to all the games and I sit behind home plate, or the foul ball guy who is probably one of the top 10 world's biggest losers. That's your personality. Is like, yeah, I don't know. It kind of feels sad to me, to be honest.
Does that extend to like season ticket holders? Like,
No, of course not. That's not the same thing. I'm saying like when it becomes your personality, it's like I travel to the
traveler.
thing. And it's
Yeah,
like,
yeah.
okay, yeah, you do the same thing every year. Like, how about mixing? Like, you don't want to try anything new. You want to, anyway, whatever.
Well,
Each their own.
It's funny that you brought up the expense of it all, because that was one of the reasons why there were actually 6 of these guys going back years, and the club has slowly shrunken. Can't even speak, because of, obviously these guys are getting older, and because of how expensive it has become,
Mhm.
they've stopped traveling as much, and they've really made this kind of their singular trip as a group.
Yeah,
So
see,
it's
I
definitely part
wouldn't
of it.
exclude my friends from a trip if it was about the boys. Like, that's what I'm saying.
Yeah.
That people would be like, JD, this is where the friends get together. It's like, no, if you wanted your friends to be together, you would never allow it for a situation where some of them get priced out of the event and then you keep going as a smaller and smaller, more exclusive group. That's lame as hell. Anyways, what's next?
You're going to be hitting the bars early during the Olympics.
Yes,
They're
100%.
They're going to be opening at 6 a.m. in a lot
Mm-hmm.
of places because of obviously the Olympic events going on early in the morning. So I
Mhm.
wanted to get your thoughts on the people that are going to go down to the bars at 6.
So I think I have a bad rep with servers because I'm someone who pushes back with where we're at with tipping culture. I think
Okay.
if you go to a restaurant, you have a nice meal, you should tip accordingly. Like, you should tip a very good percentage. I'm not a big believer of like you're at a concert and you go buy an expensive beer and person hands you a can. You're supposed to, like, the tip option coming up being 25%. Yeah, no, that's lunatics behavior. I'm not big on that being at like a bakery. I get a cookie and it's like I got a tip 30. It's like, no, you're charging me $5 for a cookie. Like, that's the
Yeah.
deal here. But I actually thought about the servers in this regard. This is a nightmare for them because they're creatures of the night.
Yeah.
These servers that work at the bars, like, they wake up the middle of the day. They're not used to this. So now all of a sudden they got to be working late and coming in early and have these staggered shifts, and all of a sudden 6 a.m. That's a nightmare for them. So what I would say is this is actually a situation where if you're going to the bars and you are enjoying the public experience of games in a public venue, you got to tip your ass off for these servers that are showing up and doing this at 6 a.m. because that is a grind. They didn't sign up to be, doing brunch. They're signing up to now do something that's way outside the boundaries of what they should be doing. So thank you, servers. Thank you, bars. I will